So, when Rad Bill told me that he wanted to do a deep dive into the life of John McAfee, the inventor of the most annoying piece of bloatware to ever slow down the boot up time of any Windows product I've ever owned, McAfee Antivirus, the name elicited an image of the most vanilla, Caucasian, Dick Cheney-looking motherfucker to ever touch grass.
Yeah.
I also always pronounce McAfee Antivirus as McAfee, though, so, maybe it was me.
No, I did the same. Yep.
When we started the research for this episode, Jesus tap dancing fuck was I not prepared for this man's appearance.
Yeah, we sequence episodes like this pretty regularly, but you're going to be especially thankful that this is our routine here because John is going to go from a smart kid to a drug addict and alcoholic to a mega millionaire to a yogi to a bath salt connoisseur. And every one of those personalities changes your appearance in an incompatible way. Picture the war-torn, hollow eyes of someone who's been drunk for a decade. The dyed hair and anti-aging regimen of a moneyed Silicon Valley type who wants to stop aging. The tattoos of an early 2000s yogi, and the hair and clothing choices and ill effects of very high doses of experimental drugs. I haven't described his height, his original hair color, his hairstyle, his build, anything. But what you're imagining, if you haven't paused to look him up already, probably isn't too far off from his actual appearance. We're going to pause for 1 second here so you can look up this man and see for yourself, and then we're going to tell you how he thinks of himself.
Okay, so when asked, he described himself as James Bond meets Scarface with a little bit of Indiana Jones.
It's really heavy on the Scarface.
There was clearly a point where his hair was all gray, and he decided to dye it black, just to then bleach the top to complement the tribal tattoos that adorned his shoulders and the large caliber assault rifle that he always seemed to be holding.
By the way, did we mention he's also, completely insufferable?
As I learned more about this antivirus crusader, his appearance was honestly kind of tame in comparison to the absolutely chaotic whirlwind that was this man's life. And to be clear, a destructive whirlwind.
He's Indiana Jones's uneducated deadbeat dad who goes around telling people that between us, I can still kick Indy's ass.
And if your algorithm is the same as mine, you've seen the meme about how Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk could use their fortunes to become real-life superheroes like Batman. And I think that one of the lessons that we're going to take away from the story that we're about to tell is we should all be thanking our lucky stars that neither of these two had made that attempt. Because John McAfee is a case study in how damaging a multimillionaire with enough delusion and main character syndrome can be when they experiment with drugs, vigilantism, politics, and then some more drugs. But as we tell the story, we do need to keep in mind that John McAfee is potentially the least reliable narrator of his own story. Because in addition to being an absolute certifiably crazy person, he was also known throughout his life to just lie for fun and was also intoxicated most of the time. So, in this episode, we'll try to parse truth from fiction and ride the absolutely terrifying roller coaster that is the life of John McAfee, the creator of the most boring computer program known to man. Now, aside from dead, John McAfee is many, many things. Mangy, for example. He looks like he probably smelled worse when he was alive. Also, a murderer, allegedly. A pedophile,
allegedly.
But he is also a subject matter of this podcast. I'm Money Mike.
And I'm Rad Bill. And
this is from the Jesus is the people.
Our scene opens at a U.S. Army base in Cinderford, England, on September 18th, 1945, where John was born to Dawn McAfee and Joanne Williams. I'm not sure if the fact that John being a perfect combination of both his parents' first names was intentional.
Dawn and Joan.
Or if they just wanted John to always have someone in his class with the same name, but I really like to think it was the former.
Don and Joan. It's probably some boring ass like, oh, it was King John or some.
Oh, it was probably someone's dad.
Yeah.
But whatever. Don was a highway surveyor after he got out of the military, and Joanne was a stay-at-home mom. So no rich parents here.
Yes.
After a few short years in England, John's family moved to Salem, Virginia. During these formative years, John paints the all too familiar picture of a young boy and his mother living in constant fear of an abusive, alcoholic father figure. John McAfee was a monster, and John has detailed the brutal beatings endured by both him and his mother during this time. Life continued in this way until John was 15. Where we come to not only the first possible major tragic event in John's life, but also our first crossroads in the truth. According to John, as well as the relevant authorities, when John was 15, his father committed suicide. However, years later, a ghostwriter who worked with John would suggest in the documentary Running with the Devil, The Wild World of John McAfee, that John admitted to several people close to him that he actually murdered his father and made it look like a suicide. As will be the case with many controversies associated with John McAfee, the source for both of these possibilities is, well, John.
It's just
at
John.
Different points in his life. So either his father committed suicide, which would be a horrible thing to live through, and would most likely haunt any sane person for the remainder of their lives, or John felt that he was pushed to murder due to his father's behavior. Again, the truth here really seems to depend on who John is talking to.
Yeah, so, okay. In this first episode, we're going to be looking for the why of it all. Why did John McAfee become John McAfee? And this, I think, is truly the first why. There's no single defining moment for this man. Every other thing he does is a why, by the way. We're going to be going through a ton of whys. A Sunday for John McAfee would be a life-destroying event for most others. McAfee was relatively undeterred by his father's abuse when he was alive, and according to him, he didn't let his father's death slow him down that much. He went on to shovel driveways or mow lawns or something as his first job. And it sounds like this is just lazy research on our end, but what I just blurted out is close to verbatim of what John said describing his first job in an interview. It's not a great departure at all.
He was like, I was delivering newspapers. Wait, maybe I was shoveling driveways. In the moment, you can't tell if his brain is just so addled by whatever intoxicants he's using at the time, or if he's trying to figure out which sounds cooler.
Straight up. Like, is he just making narrative choices as he goes? There's no telling. He claimed that from the age of 12, he was supposedly knocking on doors and mowing yards, shoveling snow, etc. He got a few paper routes, and by the time he was 18, 3 years after his father's death, he had worked, quote-unquote, a bunch of other entrepreneurial jobs and had amassed $100,1963. $3 million today.
Dude, I forget how old this dude was.
Yeah.
In 1963, he was a teenager.
He was a voting adult, just about.
And like, when you see pictures of this guy from 2019, you're like, is he embalmed?
His bleached hair does age him down a frustrating amount. I hate that works.
It kind of does.
I hate that it works.
He's laughing at us because we're like, I wouldn't bleach my hair at 70 and I'll look 70.
Yeah, right. He went off to Roanoke College to get a bachelor's degree. While here, he started a business selling magazine subscriptions.
Free magazine subscriptions, which is a scam as old as time. It's the same principle as, this item is free on Temu. You just send us $10.99 for shipping, and we'll get our child labor force to send it to you while we sell your bio-info to the highest bidder. Except without all the slave labor and stuff. But according to McAfee, as an undergrad with a small magazine business, it made a fortune.
Yeah, real fast here. I think McAfee's recollection of his financial successes from early childhood to right in this moment is just bullshit. If my take on that is not extremely obvious already. I'm sure he did great, but he was supposedly charging $1.25 to mow a yard when he was 12. How do you get $100,000 out of that, even with 4 paper routes or whatever else? It's just nonsense.
The math doesn't math. This man, from the get-go, clearly is down to scam. So I'm wondering if he had like 1 or 2 big fish scams and he had to like act like it was amalgamation of other streams of income just so it didn't look so sketchy.
I'm sure that this amount was not a fortune by any stretch, but when I was in college, I would have hoarded myself out for a meal. So even a modest amount surely made more meager looking without adjusting for inflation is impressive, especially around the academic load of a mathematics degree, which is what he would graduate with. I always admired the kids who would like do this in college, particularly the ones from modest backgrounds. I don't buy much into the you either got it or you don't stuff that you hear in corporate America all the time. But this entrepreneurial just do something to make $1 and then roll that into something else to make $1 thing seems to be almost compulsive to those who have it. And I have no idea where it comes from. None.
Yeah, well, when it comes to compulsions, John definitely has those.
John is a compulsive man. Further, like many others I knew with this urge, while not focused on his studies, John used this steady stream of capital to get absolutely wasted. And here is further proof that the amount he claims to make here is greatly overblown. He supposedly spent all of this fortune he made up to this point on getting wasted at 18.
That is impressive.
It would kill you. It
would hopefully kill you.
$3 million in drugs.
I just felt some blood go below my pelvis when you said that.
I know.
I'm just kidding. I don't do drugs anymore.
Yes. No, of course. I've never done a drug at all. Actually, real talk. Money Mike does not do drugs anymore. Good for him. We're happy.
He doesn't. Yeah. But anyway.
When asked during that other interview what he would be doing as a teen today instead of a paper route because they're obsolete and all, he said he'd be promoting Vanguard prostitutes online and making an absolute fortune.
So when Rad Bill wrote that, I didn't do this piece of research. I interpreted Vanguard as like the investment, like retirement company, and I was
until you just clarified that it wasn't that. I was under the I just hadn't questioned it in my head yet. I hadn't given it real critical thought and was like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, I was like, they're really coming out with some unique funds these days.
Talk about horizontal expansion. My God. So anyway, he started getting wasted here, and he kept going.
Yeah.
We're not going to bring it up here until he takes a breather, but John McAfee, from this point forward, is fucked up until we say he isn't fucked up anymore.
Even if he says he's not fucked up anymore, because that also comes into play. He'll be like, he literally was doing an interview talking about how sober he was, drinking whiskey. Bananas.
There's real damage that McAfee's success is going to cause here. Don't do drugs, kids. It could get you a bachelor's in mathematics. The horrifying truth is that for some, drugs and alcohol just don't slow you down that much. At first.
At first is big.
Yeah.
I think it's also incredibly interesting how quickly John gravitated to intoxicants while growing up in a household where so much havoc was caused by his father's relationship with alcohol. I know a lot of people who grew up in alcoholic homes and have always been just cautious around this stuff because you never really know where that tipping point is.
Yeah.
Where you go from someone who likes to party to beating your kids. And other people just seem to be illustrations on how closely the apple falls to the tree, regardless of
all those red flags.
Yeah. And we'll see in the story that changes in John's relationship with intoxicants would mark pivotal changes in his life. Like, things change with the way that John does drugs, and things change for John. But anyway, back to our story.
Yep. Next up was a doctorate in mathematics at Northeast Louisiana State College. And John would get so close to getting a doctorate in mathematics. So close, John.
Yeah, sorry about last night, man. I got so fucked up I almost got a doctorate in mathematics. But the truth here is John got expelled because he was hooking up with one of his undergrads, who would become John's first wife. This is the first of many of his marriages. And he seems to definitely crave these types of relationships for whatever reason. We will see many women come and go in John's life, many of them not of legal age in the United States, but watching the footage of him with the women that he's married to or dating at the time is so weird. And I'm not sure if the first wife was like this because I haven't seen any footage of the two together.
Yeah.
But in the footage with John with these other women, you almost can't tell who's using who. It's clear that John will have all of the physical and monetary power in his relationships later in life, but it seems like a few of his wives were pretty wise to the game and they were just playing along for material security.
Which makes sense. There's symbiosis in that relationship. And also, I don't think anyone knows the name of John's first wife. She is more mysterious than John McAfee himself.
What if he never had a first wife?
What if his first wife was a lie? Oh my God, we're blowing the lid off of this thing.
What if John was his first wife? What if he married himself like all those hustle podcasters tell me to do?
It's like Tyler Durden. Again, all of this is fairly unsurprising behavior from someone who has apparently just been fucked up all the time forever. But after expulsion, he got a job at Univac in Tennessee designing punch card systems. He got busted with a big old bag of weed, though, and despite his getting off scot-free, the Univac people proceeded to fire his ass. Next up was a job at Missouri Pacific Railroad. John was apparently super badass and faked his resume to get this job. Nice, John. He was working with an IBM computer to churn out train schedules, and he apparently optimized their system, and then he discovered LSD. Before long, he was dropping it every day before work and then going in to route trains.
This explains a lot.
Yeah.
Probably another big-ass why. You know, heavy hallucinogen use tends to be defining in people's lives.
Particularly with LSD.
Allegedly.
Like LSD, right, allegedly indeed. With LSD in particular, though, you never really know what's in it.
I think back in John's day, it might have been a little... I mean, drugs in general were a little cleaner back then. We have to realize, where are we? The 80s? The 70s?
Even late 60s, perhaps. Yeah. Late 60s, early 70s.
So I think a lot of the research chemicals that have come out are products of more recent decades. But, to your point, you never really know what you're getting.
True. One day, John decided to spice things up and do some DMT instead of his regular dose of LSD. So for those of you who don't know, DMT is one of the most powerful hallucinogens in the entire fucking world. I'm going to level with you. Most of the people I know who have done it more than once have obviously done it more than once. It shows. Real talk, I think it kind of fucks you up forever a little. Anyway, John took this fuck you up forever drug and committed the cardinal sin. He did a little bit, got impatient, and then did the whole damn bag. And anyone who has ever done edibles just winced a little bit. By the way, I think this is like the why. I think this explains John more than anything, in fact. Family shit, a few failed marriages, and we'll get to that. Lots of crime, personal and financial hardships. The one thing that really makes John McAfee, I think, is this entire bag of DMT. I think John would agree with us on this. According to John, when the bag of DMT kicked in, his, quote, world shattered. His words. He couldn't understand what anyone was saying, and he apparently came to behind a dumpster in downtown St. Louis. He would never return to his job at Missouri Pacific for the sake of his narrative, I guess. And as John tells it, he would go to his grave still not entirely confident that he had ever fully recovered from this trip. And candidly, looking at his behavior, he probably fucking didn't, man.
It's weird right? I didn't think about this until we were reading this story. But DMT, it is a very short duration hallucinogen.
Yeah.
It only lasts, I think, 15 to 30 minutes tops.
10 to 20 minutes. It's like a whippet almost.
And you usually smoke it.
Is that right?
His whole claim of I fucked up and accidentally did the whole bag. I feel like that this is a hard drug to do that with. I think it's a whole lot more likely that he just did the whole bag because that's how he does drugs. You know?
I think it's very likely that he was just like, they were like, be careful because this is DMT, and if not treated correctly, it fucks people up forever. And he proceeded to do the whole bag. I think that's very likely.
Yeah, I feel like, and again, John is so intentional with how he forms narratives about himself. I could really see him altering that detail to create more of an uh-oh or victim presentation about this experience when
Make
really
it
was an experience of somebody who has a bad relationship with intoxicants, getting intoxicants, and then doing what he does with all of the intoxicants he gets, which is doing as much at one time as possible. But either way, to Rad Bill's point, I've never done DMT, but an oopsie daisies with hallucinogen dosage like that is going to fuck you up for a long time.
It is. It's going to change some shit. But regardless, he bounced around after this from prestigious job to prestigious job. GE, NASA, Xerox, all of them gave him a shot, and his drug habit continued to intensify along the way. Sorry about last night, man. I got so fucked up, I got a job at GE, NASA, and Xerox.
It's so funny because so many of the people that we talk about on this podcast, our research seems to paint them as simpletons whose parents' money was just gasoline on a fire of being in the right place in the right time, and boom. But with John, he does seem to have a natural cunning. Like, he does seem to be fairly smart. And he also has a complete disregard for morals and just a nasty penchant for intoxicants.
Yes, he does. In 1983, he was working at Omex as the director of engineering and selling cocaine on the side. Both prestige jobs at the time.
Honestly, good for him for multitasking.
It's hard. Being a cocaine dealer in the 80s is a full-time job. He was breaking the cardinal rule again, though, and getting high on his own supply. He was doing a shitload of cocaine. He'd start every day with the stuff, and if he did too much and couldn't focus, he'd take a beat. Oh, wait, I was about to misread that line. He would take a Quaalude and mellow out. Often, though, the Quaalude would be an overcorrection, so he'd have to rebalance with more cocaine. And then in the afternoons, his brain's fried from all the Quaaludes and cocaine and the back and forth, so he'd mellow out by just downing a bottle of scotch. Eventually, he and Omex agreed that it would be best if he and the company parted ways, so he did. He went home, his wife left him, he gave away his dog, and he went on a bender.
The most frustrating part with this story at this point is John seems kind of cool, right?
If you were to ask me, he seems like a combination between James Bond, Rambo, and whatever else he fucking said in that one interview. Yes.
Oh, I hate agreeing with that, but he's traipsing his way through fancy job titles while putting more powder up his nose than a skier who just face planted. He's scamming his way into big companies, and his dark emotional past just evokes all the same feelings as a good episode of Mad Men. If you feel like you're following the main character of a cheesy Netflix movie, you're not alone.
Yeah.
It's easy to be drawn into that trap because it's intentionally set by John and how John talks about himself and how he interacts with the world around him. In videos later down the line, he would constantly be introducing himself to people as, "Hi, I'm John McAfee. Maybe you've heard of me?"
God, that just sucks so hard.
It's like he hires people to follow him around and film him just so he can star in his own little thriller. He's clearly trying to match the horrible narcissism in his own head with what's going on in the world around him. But as of right this second, he's cool. But don't get attached.
He's cool, but there's collateral damage. And also, he's cool according to the story he's telling. The biggest
About
source.
himself.
Yes, the biggest source we found on John McAfee is John McAfee.
John fucking McAfee. The dude talks about himself incessantly.
It's all he talks about. Here, by the way, is where he finds rock bottom, according to his story. Supposedly, he gets sober and switches gears to become one of the 80s sweater vest wearing bespectacled tech titans, just in the nick of time.
Yeah, and as someone with experience in the rooms of AA and other get sober places, I actually believe this. You see it all the time. People hit bottom, shit gets bad, and they just try to change everything they can. And there's usually some annoying degree of spirituality that grows from within this, which John also seemed to elicit.
Yeah, the movie Get Him to the Greek, I hate what's-his-face, the actor who plays...
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand
When the fucking allegations came out about Russell Brand, people were like, oh, he didn't have those already?
Yeah, right.
I could have sworn that I thought we figured that out years ago.
I just assumed. Yeah, the Me Too movement. It was Harvey Weinstein. A group of friends and I all agreed that James Franco was going down, and he did. And I thought somewhere in there Russell Brand got nicked, but I guess not, ? But there was a scene in that movie where Rose Byrne's character, I love Rose Byrne, kind of epitomized his behavior by saying that he turns everything into heroin. And I think John McAfee, as an addict, sort of does the same thing. He gets off the drugs and he jumps into the next thing with the exact same intensity that he greeted drugs with.
Yeah, everything is about the high.
Yep, and that's how John talks anyways. John is his drug use. But anyways, Lockheed Martin was his next big break, and he apparently was able to stick around a little while and was even hired to work on a hyper-secret black program within the company. Which makes me question the process of getting top secret clearance further than I already have.
Did we find any proof of this?
There's none. That's the problem with claiming
Okay.
you did a top secret clearance thing.
Yeah.
Is that I could claim that and you couldn't prove it at all unless you had top secret clearance that was greater than what I was pretending to have. Like if I said, oh, I've got level 12 top secret clearance, I don't know how you verify that.
As we're, kind of reading through John's story, I'm always asking the question, like, do I believe this? Is this true? And this particular point, it sounds too spy thrillery.
For this guy, for someone who's
Yeah.
talking about himself like he's James Bond, it seems a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
Yes, to get top secret clearance beforehand, he was apparently interviewed by the NSA and was candid with them, admitting to cheating on his wife whenever given the chance. I don't know which wife he's talking about here. Doing every drug in the book and selling every drug in the book. And he somehow still got top secret clearance. Classic Rambo James Bond combination.
The interviewer must have looked at him and said, wow, that takes guts. We need someone here who's got guts, son.
Right? As he told it, bear in mind again, deciphering anything this guy says is a challenge. He would fly a few states over each week to work on whatever the black program was. Many believe it was some voice recognition program. And on the weekend, he would return home to his home in San Jose where he had nice cars, a boat, his wife, a pretty big house, and his deadbeat brother-in-law, Rich. And John really seems to dislike Rich.
Yeah,
but
fuck you, Rich.
Fuck you, Rich. But he describes this annoying give me that newspaper moment where Rich was reading the morning copy of the San Jose Mercury News, and according to John, Rich says, whoa, look at this. There's this thing called a computer virus. They just discovered it. And according to his retelling, John says,
give me that fucking newspaper.
This was 1986, and two Pakistani brothers had created this virus and called it Brain. More of a test than anything. This virus didn't do any harm necessarily. It was designed to hide, survive, and propagate. Common objectives for modern computer viruses, which tend to do plenty of harm, actually. The two brothers included their contact information and address within the lines of code in the virus, which John eventually found, and he took a stab at hiring them to help him program code to stop viruses like the one that they had created. He reached out to a friend as well at Stanford for help on the project and gets to work trying to address this virus issue. John would tell you that leaving Lockheed Martin to start this venture would cost him everything. Again, he apparently had cars, boats, motorcycles, more money than God, which is a common refrain for him here. And when he came home and told his wife that he left this cushy job, she apparently walked right out on him and he lost everything, starting from scratch again. However, success on the antivirus journey supposedly came pretty quickly, in large part because John was able to market the product as John. Though bespectacled and sweater vested, he was still a fucking freak deep down here. Shortly after the company's advent, John McAfee bought a Winnebago, loaded it with tech, and christened it the Antivirus Paramedic Unit. The Antivirus Paramedic Unit only serviced the San Jose area, but when someone called, he would drive right out and begin looking for quote-unquote virus residue. Shit like this,
fucking Ghostbusters.
Shit like this is why your grandparents still don't know how to use a fucking computer, by the way.
Holy shit. He was fucking ghostbusting.
He was fucking Ghostbusters. That's exactly right. That's what this is. Before long, he made it onto the news where he announced companies were getting destroyed by these viruses all over the place. He reaffirmed this message again in a book in 1989, and soon after this point, his company would be making $5 million a year. After another news cycle in 1992, where he fearmongered about a computer virus called the Michelangelo virus, the company would go public, and John McAfee's shares would suddenly be worth 80 million 1992 American dollars.
And the rest is history. No reason to tune into our next episode. John McAfee will stay with his next wife and never kill anyone or have sex with any underage women or try to become a vigilante. He will just be a normal rich guy from here on out.
Yep, happy ending. And everyone after this doesn't despise him for overhyping computer viruses or grow to hate his software, and he certainly doesn't either. No reason to tune in, guys. Thank you for listening to this one, though.
Yeah, but seriously, we'll catch you on the next one. Shit gets real.
We'll catch you on the next one. Yes, shit does indeed get real. Like, comment, and subscribe, and goodbye.